You might think that sewing is about comfort, care, and beauty. You imagine neat stitches, clean fabric, and happy faces. But if you had been born a black woman enslaved in the southern states of America in centuries past, your needle would not be a tool for creativity, but an instrument of survival and torture. Your life would be thousands of identical days spent among filth, cold, pain, and humiliation. Each stitch would not bring you closer to freedom, but would become another twist in the chain that binds you. In this story, there will be no fairy tale transformations, no happy endings, no simple answers. Here, there are only tired hands, other people's dresses, blood on fabric, and the total silence surrounding your name. Welcome to a reality most people would rather not see. But before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. Now, make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake up before the sun even considers it worthwhile to rise. The night has not ended, it has simply shifted color. There is no soft light creeping in, only the kind of gray that seeps into the bones and tells you that yesterday never truly left. The air is cold and tastes like moldy wood, rat droppings, and someone else's breath. You lie on a straw stuffed mattress that feels more like a forgotten grave than a bed, and when you move, something sharp, perhaps a splinter, perhaps a bug, burrows further into your thigh. You do not cry out. You never cry out. Your fingers ache before they even start working. They remember yesterday and the day before and the hundreds of days before that. You were not born with calluses, but they arrived early and stayed. The joints are swollen, the nails split. The pads of your thumbs are dark and raw from where the needle pushes again and again, always in, always through. You wonder if the bone has learned to anticipate the pain. The overseer is a woman today. That is worse. She is white, of course, and wrapped in wool even though she will not step outside it all day. She tells you to hurry as though you are resting. She tells you to smile as though your jaw is not clenched from the cold. She tells you to be grateful as though you were chosen for greatness and not chained to routine. Your workplace is not a room, it is a shed. Four walls, no windows, a roof that leaks when it wants to. It is wedged between the hog pens and the horse stalls, and in every breath is a gamble, dung, hay, rot, mildew, sometimes all at once. The light comes from a hole in the ceiling that is sometimes patched with burlap, sometimes not. You sit at a wooden bench with splinters you have named and cursed. The bench is too low, the stool too high. Your back bends forward like a question mark that will never be answered. You sew. That is your purpose. You sew clothing for people who will never say thank you. You sew shirts with buttons made of bone, trousers with deep pockets you will never touch, waistcoats with satin linings that will caress the skin of those who own your hours, your air, your name. You once touched velvet. It was a scrap, already dirtied, already torn. It felt like sin. You kept it under your mattress until it was taken. They give you bolts of fabric as if they are gold, but they are often coarse, thick, and dyed with something that stings your nose. You have no patterns. You have memorized what they want. Your job is not to imagine, it is to obey. You work with needles that are sometimes bent, sometimes broken. You have to straighten them using a rock. You have learned to do it without shattering the eye. The others talk sometimes. You do not. Talking makes time slower. Talking invites mistakes. Mistakes invite pain. You once saw a girl slapped so hard her tooth landed in her lap. She had sewn a seam crooked, one crooked seam. You do not know where she went after that. You do not ask. You drink water that tastes like metal. You eat something they call stew. It is gray, like everything else. You eat it with a wooden spoon that you carved yourself with the dull edge of your sewing scissors. That act of rebellion, owning a spoon, is the most dangerous thing you have ever done. You keep it hidden in your shift. There is a schedule, but it is not yours. They decide when the bell rings. They decide when the work begins. They decide when you may rest. But rest is not rest. It is 10 minutes to sit in the dirt and look at your bleeding hands. If you are caught not looking grateful, they shorten it to 5. There is a child who sometimes brings the fabric. She is 7. Her name is Lily. Not your Lily, hers. She is white, and her hands are soft. She watches you work with a mixture of curiosity and boredom, the way someone might stare at a cow chewing. You think she might grow up to be a mistress one day. You try not to hate her. The day passes the way it always does, stitch by stitch, hour by hour, blood by blood. You lose track of how many garments you make, maybe 4, maybe 8. You are supposed to keep count. You pretend to. The truth is, it does not matter. When the sun goes down, or rather, when they say it goes down, you are permitted to stop. You are not allowed to keep the needle. You have to hand it in. They count them to make sure you do not steal one, as if you could use a sewing needle for anything but more sewing, as if you would want to. Back in your hovel, you wash your hands with water so cold it makes your bones rattle. You press your fingers into your palm to check which cuts are still open. Most of them are. You wrap your hands in strips of old rags. You do not pray. You have stopped praying since they sold your sister. You sleep with your back to the wall. The night sounds are mice, coughing, wind, and sometimes a scream from the cabins across the field. You close your eyes. You dream not of freedom, but of color, blue, green, red, colors you have sewn but never worn. In your dream, you are faceless, nameless, but dressed in a gown of gold. Then the cold wakes you. Tomorrow is another day, and your hands, broken as they are, will still remember how to stitch. You think sometimes, as you push the needle through the stiff, unforgiving cloth, that you are not making clothes. You are making walls. You are sewing a cage, each stitch another bar, another lock. The overseer passes behind you, her boots clicking sharp on the dirt, and you are reminded that freedom is a word you know but will never pronounce out loud. The days are a chain of repetitions. The bell rings. You shuffle into the shed, hunched and silent, joining the other women. The air is always heavy with the sour smell of sweat and mildew, old food, wet animal, and the vinegar they use to wash out bloodstains. There is no conversation. Voices are a liability. The only language is the dull, relentless whisper of thread being pulled through fabric, the snap when it catches, the hiss when someone draws a finger through an accidental slice. You sew dresses with ribbons and lace, even though you have never worn either. You sew shirts with pleats and buttons, sometimes 12 buttons on one shirt. You sew jackets that will ride on the backs of men who do not remember your face, or your name, or the way your hands shake when you are tired. Each piece is inspected twice, once by the overseer, who finds fault in every line, and again by the mistress, who cannot understand why colored hands make so much trouble. You cannot explain that a child with bleeding fingers and swollen joints will not make perfect stitches, no matter how many times she is whipped. Sometimes the orders come in last minute. A dinner party tomorrow, 3 new gowns, 4 new shirts. You must sew through the night. The candles are cheap, and the light is yellow, flickering, and cruel. You squint until the lines blur. If you make a mistake, you have to rip out the stitches and start again, losing hours, losing what little hope you had of a few moments' sleep. You are given scraps to wipe your hands. You are not given soap. Your hands grow rough, the nails jagged. When the thread catches under your nail, you bite your tongue so hard you taste blood. You do not want to give the overseer the satisfaction of seeing you cry. She already calls you lazy, though you are the first to arrive and the last to leave. You sometimes wonder what it would feel like to be slow, to dawdle, to rest, to pause. But you have seen what happens to those who are too slow. The whip, the shouted insults, sometimes worse. Last week, a girl dropped her thimble. She spent an hour on her knees in the mud, searching for it. The overseer watched her, silent, tapping her stick against her leg. When the girl finally found it, her face was streaked with tears and dirt. She did not eat that night. No one did. The message was clear. The days blend together. There is always more work, never less. When you finish one batch of clothes, another arrives. Some weeks you sew uniforms for the field hands, rough shirts and trousers that will be soaked in sweat and stained with soil before the week is done. Other weeks, it is delicate things for the mistress and her friends, petticoats, bonnets, gloves. The fabric is softer, the colors brighter, but the work is harder. The stitches must be invisible, the hems even, the lace unbroken. If you prick your finger and a drop of blood stains the cloth, you must start again. There is no reward for good work. There is only punishment for bad work. Meals come and go. You eat in silence, hunched over a tin bowl, the same greasy stew every day. Sometimes there is a crust of bread so hard it hurts your teeth. Once a week, you get a slice of smoked pork. It is gone in 2 bites, and you lick the grease from your fingers, wishing there was more. If you are lucky, you can swallow before the bell rings again. You do not know what time it is, except by the light and the noise. The day starts in darkness and ends in darkness. Sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear music drifting from the big house, laughter, the clink of glasses, the piano's rolling song. It sounds beautiful and terrible all at once. It is a reminder that there is another world, just out of reach, built on your labor, your pain, your silence. On Sundays, there is church. The white folks sit in the front, on benches polished smooth by their own weight. You and the other slaves are allowed in the back, or sometimes outside, if there is not enough room. The preacher speaks of forgiveness, of salvation, of turning the other cheek. You listen because listening is safer than not. You try to believe, but it is hard. The only thing the church gives you is 1 hour without a needle in your hand. Sometimes, at night, you remember the old songs. You hum them quietly as you work, so quietly the overseer cannot hear. The melody keeps your hands moving, keeps your mind from wandering too far. You remember your mother's voice, rough and low, and the way she used to sing while she sewed. She made you a doll once, from rags and scraps, and you loved it more than anything. When you were sold, you had to leave it behind. Now you sew dolls for the mistress's children, watching their soft hands clutch what your own hands will never hold. Every so often, a new face arrives in the shed. Another woman, or a girl, or a boy old enough to hold a needle. They learn quickly, or they suffer. You do not ask their names, because names are dangerous. If you get too close, you will lose them. If you keep your distance, you will not break when they are taken away. The days grow colder, the shed is drafty, and the wind sneaks through the cracks in the boards. Your fingers stiffen, but you keep sewing. You sew until your hands are numb, until your back aches so badly you want to scream. You sew until you cannot remember anything but the next stitch, the next seam, the next dress, the next shirt. You sew because you have to. You sew because if you stop, you are nothing. You sew the cage that holds you, stitch by careful stitch. The cage grows tighter every day. You wonder sometimes if anyone on the outside can see it. Sometimes, if the mistress is feeling generous or simply bored, she sends for you to mend her personal things. Not dresses for dinner or visiting, but the soft linens she sleeps in, the delicate slips and petticoats that only her own skin will touch. This is supposed to be a privilege. You are not allowed to speak, only to kneel at her feet on the faded rug and wait for her to hand over the bundle of lace, ribbon, and thin white cloth. You are not trusted to enter the big house by yourself. The maid, younger than you, with pale hands and a thin braid, meets you at the back steps and watches you as if you might take a silver spoon and run. The floors are polished, and your feet feel clumsy, your body oversized and clunky among the fragile teacups and thin chairs. The air is heavy with perfume, dust, and the faint bitterness of soap. When you finally sit down, you lay the fabric across your lap and begin. Your hands are too dark, too rough against the white. You try not to think of this, but the mistress comments anyway. She complains that your knuckles are big, your nails unclean, that colored girls never have pretty hands. You listen, nod, do not answer, because nothing you say will change the shape of your hands or the reason they look this way. The only thing that matters is the stitch. You sew silently, your needle flashing through the cloth in tiny, perfect stitches. If the thread is visible, you pull it out and do it again. If you leave a knot or a bump, you fix it. All the while, the mistress gossips with her friends, or scolds her children, or sighs at the sunlight on the drapes. You become invisible, a piece of furniture, useful until you make a mistake. Sometimes, in these quiet hours, your mind wanders. You imagine what it would be like to have a bed with clean linen, to wear the soft white dresses you repair. You remember your mother's stories of women who stitched their way to freedom, sewing coins or food into the hems of dresses, saving up scraps until there was enough for a secret journey north. But you know those are stories for children, not for women whose every movement is watched, whose every belonging is searched. Mistakes are dangerous. One wrong move, and the overseer is summoned, a whip in his hand and a gleam in his eye. You have seen what he does to those who make him look foolish in front of the mistress. His blows do not land on backs. He prefers hands. He knows where it will hurt most. Sometimes, if a girl screams, he laughs. If she does not, he whispers in her ear, promises her more pain, and leaves her with a mark she will carry for weeks. You still have scars from last winter, pink and shiny across your knuckles, a permanent memory of his lessons. Your hands begin to shake more often. Some days you can barely thread the needle, your fingers so swollen and stiff. You try to hide this, curling your hands into fists, biting your lips when pain flashes through your wrists. You fear the day the mistress notices. You have seen her dismiss other slaves for less. A cough, a limp, a frown. You are replaceable. Everyone is replaceable. There are days when you imagine the seams you make are not just lines of thread, but fingerprints on the rope that tightens around your neck. Every hem, every ruffle, every hidden stitch is a mark left behind, proof of your existence, proof that you were here, that you worked, that you survived another day. But no one will see them as yours. When the mistress's friends compliment her gowns, she will say they came from New York or from Paris, not from the hands of a black woman who will never leave this county, who will never be remembered. Sometimes you see blood on the fabric. You are careful to wipe it away before anyone sees, but you know that every stain is a danger. You remember the story of Sarah, who pricked her finger on a Sunday and bled on the mistress's new petticoat. She was sent to the fields. her hands too ruined for sewing, and no one saw her again. You do not know if she is alive. At night, you dream of running, not to freedom, not to the north, just away from the needle, from the thread, from the ache in your hands. In your dream, you float above the fields, light as a feather, and the wind carries you so far that you cannot see the plantation, or hear the bell, or smell the stew cooking. But you always wake before you land, and the ache is always waiting. You learn to hide things, scraps of cloth to wrap your hands, bits of soap stolen from the laundry, pins and needles tucked into your shift. These are your treasures, your secret weapons against the world. If you are caught, you will be whipped. But if you do not protect yourself, no one else will. The other women are your sisters and your rivals. You work together, but you are always being compared, always being measured. Who can sew fastest? Who makes the neatest stitches? Who uses the least thread? Who wastes the least time? The ones who fall behind are sent away, replaced by girls from other plantations or bought at auction. Sometimes a new girl arrives, her face blank with shock, and you see your own fear reflected in her eyes. You do not ask her story, you already know it. One day, the mistress asks for a special dress, a blue gown with a white lace collar, for a party. She wants it finished in 2 days. The fabric is fine and slippery, the lace delicate, the buttons small as pearls. You work through the night, your eyes burning, your fingers cramping. When you are done, the dress is perfect. The mistress is pleased. She tells her friends how clever you are, how lucky she is to have such skilled help. She does not say your name. You wonder if she even remembers it. You see the dress later on the mistress's daughter, who spins and laughs, her hair shining in the sun. She does not know who made her dress. She does not care. She never will. You go back to the shed, to the bench, to the pile of mending and new orders. Your hands are numb. You sew and sew and sew, leaving a little bit of yourself in every seam, every hem, every hidden stitch. You hope that one day someone will see your fingerprints in the fabric. You hope that one day someone will remember that you were here. But for now, there is only the needle, the thread, and the knowledge that your seams, so careful, so precise, are the only mark you will ever leave. The routine is simple, and by simple, you mean relentless. You rise at dawn. You sew until your back screams, until the shadows grow long, until the light is so dim that the thread blurs before your eyes. There is no time for counting, but you count anyway in your mind with every stitch, every garment that leaves your hands. This week you made 11 dresses, 6 shirts, and 2 bonnets, but the numbers are for you alone. No one else cares. You have no name here. Sometimes they call you seamstress. Sometimes it is just girl. Sometimes it is hey you, a barked order from across the yard or through the thin wooden wall. Your name is for memories, and even those are beginning to fade. When you were a child, your mother whispered your name as she smoothed your hair at night. a soft, warm sound. You have not heard it spoken with kindness in years. When the overseer inspects your work, he looks for flaws with an eagerness that borders on joy. A crooked hem, a loose button, a missed stitch. Each mistake is an excuse for his anger. What is this, girl? Did you forget how to sew? He asks, and you know he wants you to answer. But any answer is the wrong answer, so you look down, mouth tight, hands clasped behind your back. If you are lucky, the punishment is just his voice, sharp as the needle you use. If not, it is his hand or his stick, and the lesson is written in bruises you hide beneath your shift. The dresses you sew are not yours, not ever. You run your hands over fine muslin, crisp linen, cool cotton, and imagine for a moment what it would be like to wear such things. You dream of red, a color that means something beyond blood or sunset, a color you have never touched except in the fabric sent for the mistress's best gowns. When the scraps are left, they are gathered and thrown away, or sometimes burned. Once, you gathered enough to make a tiny doll, stitched together with a few strands of your own hair. When the mistress's youngest daughter saw it, she took it from you, giggling, and showed it to her friends like a curiosity. Later, the overseer made sure you understood. Slaves are not allowed to have toys. You never saw the doll again. When you make a dress for the mistress, every detail is important. The pleats must be perfect, the seams invisible, the buttons in a straight line, the hem even all the way around. She never thanks you, not even with a nod or a glance. She might tell you to try again, or wrinkle her nose at a color she suddenly dislikes. If you are lucky, you are ignored. If not, your work is torn out, and you must do it again and again until it is right. Sometimes the mistress's friends visit. They marvel at the gowns, the bonnets, the little ruffled aprons for their daughters. Where did you find such a clever girl? They ask. The mistress laughs and says, Oh, she was born to it. You know how these people are, so handy with their fingers. They talk as if you are not there, or as if you are a piece of furniture. They never ask your opinion, never speak your name, never wonder about the ache in your hands, the pain in your shoulders, the weariness in your eyes. You are not allowed to sew for yourself. Even when a dress is torn or too small, you are given the worst rags to repair it. Your own shift is patched so many times it is more patch than cloth. Once you asked for a scrap of muslin to mend a hole near your knee. The overseer laughed and told you, You do not need anything fine. No one is looking at you. And that is true. No one looks at you. Not really. You could disappear, and as long as the dresses keep coming, no one would notice. Sometimes, after everyone is asleep, you steal a few minutes with needle and thread, making tiny stitches in the corner of your blanket, a secret pattern only you can see. It is the only place where your creativity is allowed, hidden away from the eyes of the overseer, the mistress, and everyone else. You dream of making something beautiful, something for yourself, but you know it is forbidden. If you are caught, there will be punishment. You watch the mistress's children play, their laughter ringing through the yard as they run in circles, their dresses spinning out behind them like bright kites. They trip, they fall, they rise again, oblivious to the dirt that clings to their hems. When their gowns tear, you are called to fix them. The children are careless because they know someone will always repair what is broken. You envy them, not for their clothes, but for the freedom in their laughter. When the day ends, you have nothing to show for your labor but sore hands and aching eyes. The dresses you made are already hanging in the big house, waiting to be worn at parties you will never attend, seen by people who will never know your name or your pain. You lie in your bed, staring at the dark ceiling, and wonder what it would feel like to make something for yourself and wear it just once, even for a moment. In your dreams, you are free. You wear a dress of your own making, red as sunset, soft as hope. You walk through fields of tall grass, the wind carrying the scent of freedom. No one shouts your name, no one grabs your arm, no one tells you to hurry. You are not a seamstress, not a girl, not, hey you. You are yourself, and the world is quiet. But then you wake, and the dream fades. The day begins again. 11 dresses, 6 shirts, 2 bonnets, each one sewn with hands that ache for rest, for beauty, for dignity, each one sewn by a woman who has nothing of her own, each one sewn for someone who will never know what it cost. It begins with your hands. They always told you, as long as your hands work, you are worth keeping. But now, every morning, your fingers feel stiffer, heavier, as if someone replaced your blood with old glue. You wake before dawn as always, but it takes longer to sit up, longer to stand. There is a pain in your wrists, a slow, grinding ache that does not fade when you shake your hands or flex your fingers. You wonder if this is what getting old feels like, or if it is simply what happens when you sew for so many years that your body forgets how to do anything else. The overseer notices first, not with kindness, of course, but with impatience. What is wrong with you? You are slower than last week. You do not answer. You have learned that there are no right answers. He watches you as you work, looking for an excuse. When you drop a spool of thread and it rolls across the floor, he snorts and calls you useless. If you cannot keep up, we will find someone who can. You know he means it. Your eyes are tired too. The light in the shed is never enough, and you squint, trying to see the tiny stitches, the invisible seams. Sometimes you miss the needle's eye entirely, fumbling as your hands shake. The other women do not laugh. They know what comes next. One evening, after a long day spent mending and hemming, you try to wash your hands in the icy water behind the shed. The cold bites your skin, but your hands stay numb. You watch as red oozes from a cut you do not remember making. You bandage it with a strip of rag, but the blood seeps through before you can finish. You stare at your fingers, dark and swollen, and wonder how many more days they will obey you. The next morning, you are called to the big house. The mistress stands at the top of the stairs, looking down at you as if you are something the cat dragged in. Her seams are crooked, she tells the overseer, as if you are not there. Her work is slipping. Perhaps it is time for new hands. You want to explain, to beg for another chance, but your tongue is thick and heavy. You nod, and they send you away. You are not sent to rest. There is no such thing. Instead, they send you to the laundry. The work is different, but no easier. The wash tubs are lined up in the yard, filled with water so cold it hurts to put your hands in. The soap is rough, the lye stings your cuts, and the work is endless, scrubbing, wringing, hauling wet linen, hanging it to dry, then starting again. Your back aches, your arms ache, and your hands are raw, but no one cares. You are no longer a seamstress. You are just another pair of tired arms. At first, you tell yourself this is only for a little while. You watch the new seamstresses walk into the shed, younger and faster, their hands nimble and eager. You remember when you were like them, hungry to prove yourself, to find your place. Now, your place is outside, bent over a wash tub, your skin chapped and cracked from the cold and the soap. You see the dresses you once made hanging in the windows of the big house, and you feel a pang of something. Jealousy, perhaps, or grief, or simply emptiness. No one asks if you are well. No one asks if you are in pain. When you cough, you cover your mouth and keep working. When you feel dizzy, you lean on the tub until it passes. When you think of rest, you laugh, because the only rest you will get is the kind that never ends. Days blur together. Sometimes you dream of sewing, your hands moving without your mind, the needle flashing in the lamplight. But when you wake, your fingers curl against your chest, stiff and aching, and you know it is only a memory. You wonder sometimes if you will die here, at the washtub, alone and unseen. You think of the other women who disappeared over the years, sent away to other plantations, or to the fields, or to the graveyard behind the orchard, their names lost, their stories untold. You imagine your own end, the pain growing sharper, the work growing harder, until one day you cannot stand, cannot move, cannot work at all. What then? The overseer will send someone to drag you away, and someone else will take your place. The world will not change. There is a final insult. The last time you are allowed in the sewing shed, it is not to sew, but to sweep the floor, to pick up the scraps and threads left behind by the new girls. You see your old needle on the floor, bent and rusty, forgotten under a bench. You leave it there. You do not need it anymore. On your last day, you lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. Your hands rest on your chest, wrapped in rags, too tired to ache. You listen to the sounds of the yard, the bell ringing, the voices calling, the laughter from the big house, and you think of all the dresses you made, all the shirts, all the bonnets. Not one of them was yours, not one carried your name. You wonder if anyone will remember you. You wonder if you will be buried in a dress, or just in a ragged shift like so many before you. You wonder if, when the new seamstresses thread their needles and begin to sew, they will feel your ghost in the room, watching, waiting, remembering. You fall asleep, and in your dream you are sewing again. But this time, the thread is gold, and the cloth is soft, and the dress is yours. You finish the last stitch, and the world grows quiet. You rest at last.